Gain insight into the latest governance issues from prominent thought leaders in corporate governance as Drexel's LeBeau College of Business Center for Corporate Governance presents Evidence and Perspectives.
On the executive compensation front, there obviously have been many regulations in the past, and I'm sure the more are coming. But a couple of them, you might say, have some unintended consequences. For example, the institutionalization of 162M regulation when President Clinton was there, putting a cap on cash salaries of $1 million. And the second aspect was accounting treatment related with respect to options, where options were not accounted for in the P&L. I think both those things led to some unintended consequences. For example, escalation in compensation, more variable compensation, and eventually grant of large sizes of options. And of course, when the stock market did very well over the decade of the 80s and the 90s, it resulted in huge payoffs for the executives. I think that's one example. Then, of course, more recently, there was the taxation of the gross-up amounts for severance payments. Again, exorbitant taxes being paid, and that resulted in another unintended consequences of the cost of the corporations becoming enormous for the gross-up payments. So those are just two examples of where the legislations or accounting policies have led to what I call unintended consequences. And I think one of the things the conference board and others are trying to do is to really prevent over-regulation of this and allowing the board of directors and management to tailor compensations which are sensible for the organizations that they lead. Well, the conference board is a non-profit organization funded by its members. And it really, it does a lot of education, management education, and at the same time, from time to time, takes topical issues and puts together a study and recommendations on the positions. But they do not do any lobbying work or anything like that. So in March of this year, with the executive compensation being in the media frequently, they decided that this was a topic that needed to be addressed. And the reason they felt it needed to be addressed was that there was a fair amount of both criticism and lack of trust in the corporate leadership and the boards and compensation committees with the way this issue was being handled. So I think it was very timely for them to take it on. And so I think basically we assembled a group of different stakeholders. We had sitting CEOs, we had union representatives, we had academics, law professors, we had investors, and we had directors on this task force to really take a look at the issue of executive compensation from the perspective of multiple stakeholders. And as a result, we produced a report which really outlined some key principles, if followed, and the specific recommendations, if implemented, would lead to rebuilding the trust in the executive compensation area, which is badly needed. I think the key finding there were not, I would say, is totally new or different, but it really assembled what we consider were some basic principles of corporate compensation. One of them included the fact that there should be total transparency and a dialogue between the shareholders and the board. Second one was that the compensation should be fair and justifiable. Third area was they should be linked to pay for performance. And the other area was that the board and the compensation committees provide an active oversight of the compensation. But within those 5 principles were some very specific recommendations, including justifying only on exceptional basis what we consider were controversial compensation practices. And they were around employment contracts, gross-ups, perks, golden coffins, all those kind of things we felt were only justified when they needed. And they should be done on an exceptional basis, not as a routine basis because somebody else is doing it. We have set forth these principles, and the good news is it represents the views of multiple stakeholders. Some major companies in the United States like AT&T, Cisco, Hewlett-Packard, Tyco, and others have endorsed it. Some leading voices on governance have endorsed it very strongly. And this report will get wide circulation. It already got a lot of media attention. And we hope that companies would, and the compensation committees and boards, will take a good hard look, benchmark their current practices against the recommendations and the principles outlined in this report, and make changes as needed. Clearly, we got to this point not in a matter of months or years. It's taken decades. And I think to expect that this thing will get resolved in the next 6 months is probably unrealistic. I think it would be a steady change over the next few years, and hopefully it really results as recommendations and principles coming out of the Conference Board report.